Hey y'all, welcome back to The Inner. Today I'm joined by Wayne B. Chandler. Hey my brother.
How's it going?
It's going great. How have you been? How's everything going?
Everything is going fantastic. It's been we're moving into fall very slowly. I still have a katydid out in my backyard on the walnut tree chirping away at night, so that's always a good sign.
That's great.
Hasn't gotten too cold yet.
Yeah. I'm a I love the winter more than anything, so I'm looking forward for some type of cold to show up. But if you could introduce yourself a bit for those who don't know you.
Yeah, I wear a lot of hats, as I stated earlier, and been involved. I guess I've been on the path in its various directions and appliques for the better part of my life. Um, and that has taken me through various systems, yoga, martial arts, qigong, alternative healing. Um, I'm an author, lecturer, workshop facilitator. Uh, I do retreats in various places around the world, um, and I'm into investments. I'm into playing with money and seeing how money works in the world and how people respond, relate, and integrate. With the financial game.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So, if you could kind of narrate for us your story, how'd you become this cool guy that we know today?
Oh man, my story is, I kind of take one thing at a time, absorb myself in that, and I get to a place where I feel that I have acquired as much of what that particular thing has to offer, and then I move on. So my first forays into alternative sciences, was probably metaphysics, really studying metaphysics, looking at the implications that it brought to the table. And that eventually led me into yoga, which I stayed in for quite a while and got to a place where I began to teach it. And along that same time, or shortly thereafter, I began studies into martial arts training. You know, um, so my path has been varied, but consistent in terms of the theme, in a way that is alternative. So I've had a very out of the box um, perspective on how reality works and how we're designed to navigate that reality, so that it suits our benefit as opposed to the, various distractions, manipulations, and such that we have been enculturated and indoctrinated with, which leaves us in a place of unfulfillment. So my push has been to be fulfilled and to teach others that same process and procedure.
I like that. If you could talk about that a bit more, that navigating reality and kind of learning to control life rather than having life happen to you.
Yeah, one of the main things is that we're in this three-dimensional construct, but we're not three-dimensional beings. And so what becomes imperative for us to really embrace is our fourth dimensional design, which is that internal network that holds and channels very specific frequencies of energy, the chakra systems, the nadis, the meridians, getting in touch with the organs in the body and connecting with them in a way that they become responsive to your needs, and really getting people to really develop a deeper understanding that as a fourth dimensional entity, you lie outside of 3D, and 3D is at your mercy. So you have the ability to create your realities on a daily basis. And that's one of the things. Three-dimensional reality pushes struggle. It's about trying to create a certain level of density that makes it very difficult for people to operate within. And once you begin to do specific types of practices which lightens your three-dimensional load, then you're able to really manipulate and direct your intentions in a way that um, kind of moves 3D out of the way in terms of a challenge for you on a daily basis.
Okay. So it's, I guess you could say it's kind of like the difference between navigating like a labyrinth from inside the labyrinth versus having that aerial view to kind of function from above it. So
Exactly. Exactly.
I like that. So you mentioned that you're a martial artist. What have been some of the different forms and styles that you've been able to train in?
Um, I started my training in a system called Tien Shin Pai, which is Sky Mountain Boxing. And that was a northern system in the Chinese, northern systems. And from there, I went into Chung Chuan, and Chung Chuan was long fist. Um, Trained that for a while, and then moved into a style which was akin to Muslim boxing, and got into some of the Mongolian arts. And after some time in those traditions, I moved into a style called capoeira. And I studied capoeira for a while and then began to teach it. Taught it in Washington, D.C. for several years. And then when I moved out of D.C., went to California, I got with my instructors there and refine my skills. And when I left California and went back to Cleveland, Ohio, I began, after a while, teaching it in Cleveland. I just really happened to be in a sit down with a group of brothers, and it just kind of happened to pop up. And one of the brothers was a brother by the name of Kalindi EE. And, he was an amazingly skilled martial artist in the African traditions, so, we had a really good sit down and exchange, and started working within his system and blending the various systems is something that I began doing, you know. which was of great benefit. So after my martial training, I really moved into Qigong. And Qigong is an internal style of developing one's internal matrix. And that led me into some of the internal martial arts like Bagua.
Okay. I've only recently started studying some of the philosophies and teachings surrounding Qigong as I started studying like Taoism. Um, if you could kind of give us a breakdown on Qigong or Qigong.
Yeah, basically, Qigong is a multi-dimensional science which takes an average or even inferior human being and or normal, and makes them superior by shifting, embellishing, instilling different attributes, expanding various attributes, giving them superb and physicality, uh, great clarity of mind, um, the activation of specific abilities, and one can say talents. The thing that I love about Qigong is that Qigong is specifically designed to move a person from 3D entrapment into their fourth dimensional reality. And it does this by literally activating all of the various internal systems that operate, in the 4D, uh, and allowing a person to really embrace and utilize those systems on a daily basis. So it takes one into the nature of holographics, where you begin to know that the one thing that is real is that spark of spirit within your own being, and everything else is based in a whole, a series of holograms, and it becomes your responsibility to learn how to develop, cultivate, and activate that divine spark, which will give you the ability to manipulate, direct, redirect, and redesign the hologram that you find around you in your daily environment.
Okay. So it's really just learning to function with the rest of your real anatomy.
With that real anatomy, I mean, qigong literally means energy work, you
Hmm.
know. So its whole focus is the development of chi, of life force energy, and how to expand and direct that life force energy into a multitude of different directions, which basically is about how you lay your intention on reality to create the things that you need to have in your daily life.
Okay.
It deals with the energy that we bring into the world. There are two types I guess you can call the chi that we carry. There's original chi, and then there's acquired chi. Original chi is the chi that you brought into the world and is directly connected to your genetic sequencing and genetic code. So that chi is the chi that you really want to retain, cultivate, and hold dear to you by any means necessary. Unfortunately, we're not really exposed to or taught, the importance of retaining our original chi. And men lose that original chi mainly through the process of ejaculation, and women lose that original chi through the loss of blood every month. So in Qigong, you learn how to preserve these different elements, these different aspects. Acquired chi, acquired chi is the life force energy that we get from the food we eat, the liquids we take in, the air we breathe, you know, the supplements that we take. These are the different aspects of acquired chi that we utilize on a daily basis.
Okay. So one we bring with us, we always have, and it's about managing it. And the other is that which we receive on a regular basis that comes from our environment, our choices, our dieting, and things like that. And that system is about making good choices.
Exactly, no question. And you know, it becomes a challenge, because when you break it all down, it's all about energy. That's all it is. Everything is about energy. And so the food that you eat, if it takes a certain amount of energy, which is more energy than you may have to offer in the digestion, breakdown, and assimilation of that food, then after that process has completed and finished through the elimination of whatever it is you consumed, you have to stop and think about, well, how much energy did I really get from what I just consumed? And most people lose energy in the consumption of the foods that they eat.
Okay. So, like with certain foods, it takes more to get rid of it than it's actually giving to you in return.
Exactly.
That's cool. So, what is some advice you could give someone that may be watching concerning retaining, like when it comes to the acquired chi, it's making better choices. When it comes to retaining your original chi, what is some advice that you would give in that situation?
Well, within qigong, you have practices which allows a man to learn how to engage in sexual congress without ejaculation. You know, and that's really what one wants to strive for, is to have uh, orgasm without ejaculation, because they're two different experiences. And through specific types of practices, you can literally separate the two. You can have an orgasmic response without an ejaculatory response. For women, Qigong teaches how to take blood loss down from like 8, 6, 5 days down to 1.5 to 2 days. You don't want to stop the loss completely because it is for that 1.5 to 2 days a removal and loss of toxins, toxicity out of the body. And you do want to maintain that. But after 2 days, the body begins to acknowledge blood loss in that way as internal hemorrhaging. And
Okay.
then it has a totally different uh, array of symptoms that are very disastrous, to the organs and the glands in the human body.
All right. So in kind of just segueing a bit into the same topic but a different area of the same topic, could you talk about internal alchemy?
Yeah, internal alchemy basically is refining one's frequency and taking that frequency, which is 3 dimensional, and move it into a fourth dimensional construct. It's basically turning, lead into gold. And lead is reflective of 3D in terms of its frequency, its density. Um, it's based on the process and design of limitation as opposed to the process and design of complete and total expansion.
Okay. So what would you say are some of the main limiters in really functioning in a high frequency lifestyle?
Um, Following the cultural design that has been given to you uh, to embrace, because that cultural design is all about making you, keeping you disempowered.
Okay. So so concerning internal alchemy, it's I'm assuming it's taking those qualities that are less desirable and transforming them into desirable traits.
Exactly.
Okay. So, and as you said, this all has to do with frequency, energy, vibration. Um, Outside of that, what would you say are some of the ways to, well, for one, what are some ways that you can recognize about yourself that would say, I'm actually living a bit lower than I thought?
How you struggle as you move through your reality. How many challenges that you have on a daily basis that become very difficult, for you to achieve, your end goals on a daily basis. Um, how many impediments arise that seem to be the lion's share of your reality as opposed to fluidity? These are some of the things that lets you know that something is amiss and needs to be corrected in terms of absolution.
Okay. So if I'm always on the battlefield, I'm too low.
Yeah, um, being on the battlefield, I mean, I'm always on the battlefield, but that's where qigong comes in because
Mhm.
qigong embellishes, gives you that extra that you need to carry that warrior status and be engaged 24/7 and still have, uh, a little left over for the end of the day for yourself.
Okay. So, um, let's see. You have a book talking about the ancient future. Now, without giving away too many things, because I would love for people to check out your book, could you kind of talk about that concept a bit?
Yeah, Ancient Future is a book that's based on seven principles that came out of ancient Kemet or Egypt. And these principles speak to a variety of different operatives that keep one in synchronicity with universal flow and order. And when we're not paying heed to those principles, then we oftentimes are out of synchronicity with our cosmological and universal design. And that will automatically attract great levels of upheaval with respect to our life and how we're trying to live it. So when you look at the different axioms, that came out of Kemet, you have like the axiom of cause and effect, which speaks directly to your actions. How do you apply yourself through being proactive on a daily basis? Cause and effect and vibration. What are the vibrational fields you discharge? What are the emotional fields that you sit in on a daily basis that either expands or creates a variety of, contractions, which makes you less than? Um, the idea of the divine, the all is mind, the universe is mental, which feeds again into the holographic design of reality. um their gender specifics, that everything has its masculine and feminine dynamics, and how does one operate and utilize those in the mix of our current cultural schematic. So, all of these different axioms or laws, when looked at and investigated more deeply, more thoroughly, provides a level of self empowerment, because it works with the refinement and the cultivation of one's personal power.
Okay. So these are pretty much the same laws as the Hermetic laws.
They are the Hermetic laws.
Okay.
You know, um, Hermes, you know, was one of the gods of Kemet or Egypt, but
Hmm.
Hermes is a Greek term, and the real name for him was Jehuti or Thoth.
Yeah. So I've heard this idea. Do you believe that Hermes or Thoth was a physical person, or do you believe he's just a somewhat of a mascot for the laws and the structures?
That's a really good question. I do believe that he was an actual individual that moved and operated in the flesh, and his origin is antediluvian. And so from that particular epoch over into our current epoch, he brought these different um, laws to kind of keep and create organization. So, like in ancient India, you had individuals that were called Tirthankaras. And Tirthankara is a word that means maker of the way. And the responsibility of the Tirthankara was at the end of each epoch to make sure that this body of information made its way into this new cultural design. And I believe that Thoth was a reflection of those Tirthankaras. Because in India, they can trace back their Tirthankaras millions of years into the past.
Okay. I like that. So you believe he was a physical person, walked the earth, and was the keeper of these secrets, these mysteries, to make sure that they made it into the next age.
Exactly.
Cool. If in similar light, let's say you were given a similar role, what are some of the things that you've acquired, that you've learned, that you would love for the next generation to keep on to hold on to?
That the refinement and cultivation of one's internal matrix is paramount, and that refining that, cultivating that, allows one to have a fluid, balanced reality that is minus extreme to moderate dysfunction.
All right. So, continuing with that, what are some of the other areas in which you've been influenced?
Oh man. You know, my path is different in the sense that I came up at a time when the veil between student and master was very thin. So I've been able to literally sit with some of the greatest masters in the world and have dialogue with them and benefit from the jewels that they imparted, to me about reality and the design and journey of one's path of self development and what that looks like. I mean, I've sat with masters like Satchidananda, who was Alice Coltrane's first, master, yogic master when she got into yoga. Matter of fact, she actually composed an album and dedicated that album to him called A Journey into Satchidananda. So, and Alice Coltrane, for those who may not know, is the wife or was the wife of John Coltrane, the master saxophonist and musician. So being able to sit with these masters and partake of the wisdom that they actually put upon you, because it was very how can you say, matter of fact, I mean, they let you know about the challenges that they were having in terms of just staying on the path, um, being consistent with their internal practices, and what it entails, to like move in the world with a degree of solidarity and commitment.
So I believe I read, it might have been on your website, that you were mentored a bit by Mantak Chia.
Yeah, I'm a student of Montauk Chia's. Yeah,
What was it
I'm,
like
I'm
working with
actually
him?
a teacher in his system.
What was it like working under him and learning from him?
He's an interesting guy, Aries and very cutting edge in terms of what he brings to the table, and he loves the blending of science and metaphysical compounds and spiritual uh, formulas. He loves to integrate all of that so that you get a more holistic approach, to your internal discipline. One of the things a lot of people don't realize, when qigong moved out of Kemet or Egypt into Western Asia, there were two schools of thought. One was called the Waidan school, and the other was the Naidan school. Now, the Waidan school was concerned with like herbal formulas and elixirs. The Naidan school, its focus was exclusive in the development of one's internal power. Now, at one point, when these schools coexisted in Kemet or Egypt, they were one. But as we move into the early dynastic period of China, we find these two schools separating and becoming actually competitive with one another.
Yeah. So that's something that I have found myself researching too, just as a bit of a historian, is that the martial arts and a lot of the metaphysical systems originated in Africa and were mostly found in the information hub that was Kemet.
Exactly. Yeah, beyond a shadow of a doubt. When you go into certain areas in Kemet, and you go into the areas that are now off limits, but at one time, you had access to, the bas reliefs that you see on the wall. You actually see, the performance of the martial arts and qigong. You know,
Yeah, because on the surface level, someone would look at like your resume and assume you're practicing Asian philosophy. In reality, the Asians are practicing African philosophies.
exactly, exactly. The first two dynasties of China were black dynasties, African centered dynasties. Moving out of Kemet or Egypt into Western Asia, where they sat with the Akkad dynasty and the Elamite tradition. And it was the Akkadians and the Elamites that went in, took culture and civilization, and began the whole dynastic tradition in ancient China.
Yeah. I believe the one that they credit with founding the Shaolin school, Bodhidharma, I read somewhere that they believe he was African.
Well, I mean, Bodhidharma came out of the one of the black dynasties of India. India in its earliest cultural traditions, were occupied by black people. And Bodhidharma, coming out of the southern areas of South Asia, yeah, they had a very, very sophisticated and advanced system of the martial arts in India that they still practice to this day.
Yeah.
And Bodhidharma was a disciple of those traditions.
Yeah, because India for a long time was actually ruled by the Nubian Empire. So there was a mix of a lot of trading going on in a
Yeah,
sense where
there was trading. I wouldn't say that they were ruled by the Nubian Empire. I mean, they were Nubian in their essence, And the first dynastic traditions, you go into the Harappan dynasties, the dynasties of Mohenjo-daro and Katdiji, and those dynasties, were all those are the first dynastic traditions that literally created South Asian culture. And those dynasties lasted for millennia and were contemporary, with the dynastic traditions of Kemet and Kush.
okay. So I've heard some people's take on the matter that they believe that the Nagas in a lot of Indian presentations and illustrations were the Kushites. What has been your beliefs in that topic? Do you believe that the
Yeah,
Nagas were snake people, or do you believe that they were people with just a certain level of mastery?
I believe that there was a very dominant and consistent theme of spiritual involvement that moved fluidly through Kemet, Kush, and the dynastic areas of South Asia. And what I find to be interesting in all of that is the systems of yoga and internal practice create a very unique and very dominant thing in South Asian culture that is very distinct from what we find in Kemet and Kushite culture. Not to say that those systems were not there in Kemet and Kushite culture, but they were not as dominant in terms of their influence in consciousness with respect to Kush and Kemet. Now, there is an entire system of Kemetic yoga that is, matter of fact, my brother from another mother, Yosir Rahotep, has an entire Kemetic system that he teaches and has been teaching for many, many years, you know. And the retreat that I just did in Jamaica, the brother who was teaching the yoga every morning was teaching Kemetic yoga. And his name is Netter Ankh. And he has also studied with Muata Ashby and Yusir. So, what I find unique in the South Asian Harappan civilization are the things that they achieved and accomplished that are seen in terms of their technologies, which aren't and weren't as widespread in the technologies of Kush and Kemetic, um, dynastic tradition. Not saying that those things weren't there, but their availability wasn't as dominant. I mean, they had a huge swimming pool in South Asia that they call the Great Bath. I just call it, its design is damn near identical to the pools that we use today. They had independent showering units that you would have to shower before entering the pool. And upon exiting the pool, you would shower again. They changed the water at regular intervals with a huge system that connected to a large, substantial drain. The houses, every household was unique in the sense that they had kitchens with garbage disposal units, drainage systems that took all of the garbage and debris out of the system and fed it into these areas that had what you call sumps, which were drainage systems that remove the larger obstructions to make sure that all of the debris would leave the city and go into the Indus River, where it would be absorbed and moved out. So these areas were just amazing in terms of the technological achievements that they were able to accomplish. And you don't see that. You just don't. You don't see it in Kush and you don't see it in Kemet. You know, not to that extent. You don't see it.
Who do you believe was the older civilization? I've it's so I actually got two questions, but it's been hard to trace between the two cultures which is older because of how old they both are. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious what's your take on the matter?
My take is that in real terms, from my studies through my traditions, that the Indus Valley civilization was descendant of a Lemurian consciousness, whereas Kemet and Cush were descendant of an Atlantean consciousness. Lemuria came before Atlantis.
Got you. I haven't actually heard much about Lemuria. I hear a lot about Atlantis. Could you kind of delve into that topic a bit on Lemuria?
Yeah, Lemuria, was when you look at the different, what we call root races. The root races, Lemuria was the third root race. And its civilization lasted for like around 13, anywhere between 12 to 13 million years. Um, and in that was a variety of different transformations that took place. Their color was that of a black mahogany. So they had red kind of undertones to their skin, even though they were very, very dark. Um, they were amazing in terms of what they were able to achieve and accomplish with respect to connections with the animals around them at that time, which, were dinosaurs, which, basically carried over even into the Atlantean epoch.
Okay. So, science and structure wise, how would you describe Lemuria? I'm familiar with Atlantis being
Science and structure. See, when you look at Atlantis, you're looking at completion. When you look at Lemuria, you're still looking at the evolution into completion. So it was during the Atlantean epoch that human beings became set and centered in the optimum design that they were to reflect. Whereas in Lemuria, it was still an ongoing evolutionary process that would eventually lead into that accomplishment that took place in Atlantis. I mean, when Atlantis came into being, Lemuria was on its way out.
okay.
It was ravaged by different volcanic eruptions, earthquakes. You know, that particular continent was at that time just being ravaged and, torn apart.
Okay. So you said there were three. So we have Atlantis, Lemuria. What would be the third one?
Well, you had more than what you have. Lemuria was the third root race. Atlantis was the fourth root race.
Okay.
We are the fifth
Got
root
you.
race. Now, every root race has 7 subdivisions. In other words, each subdivision turns over what is akin to a new species. So, right now, we have been the fifth subrace of the fifth root race, and we are now getting ready to transform into the sixth subrace of the fifth root race.
Okay. Now, my viewers wouldn't like me much if I didn't ask you this question. We talked about a lot of different systems um, that use internal power, metaphysics. What would you say are, let's see, how do I want to ask this question? Do you believe that it's possible some of the more supernatural presentations that have been found in fiction and media, do you believe they hold any real world basis?
Of course, definitely. I
Like,
mean, you look at it's about, again, you go back to internal alchemy and the ability to take some time and begin refining, cultivating, and accessing those powers that are innate within us. And right now, I mean, there's so much in what movies, especially what is what well, not now, but when uh man, his name just popped out of my brain. But when he was the director and influencing the direction of the movies in Marvel, you know,
Stanley?
Stan Lee, you know, a great guy. I actually met him at one point. You know, we had a good conversation because I was actually working on a comic book that these brothers had brought to me called the Numidian Force. And I took the comic book to Stan because at that time they were having a comic book convention in Washington D.C. And I took it to him. I just dropped it to him, and I said, "What do you think?" He looked at it, went through it. He said, "Yeah, I've heard about this, you know." And he gave me some really great insight and information and constructive criticism that I took back to the brothers, you know, so that they could do a more better job. Um, but yeah, you know what's being portrayed in a lot of those Marvel sets, man, were so on point, especially the last piece, Endgame, because when you look at the whole dynamic of holographics deals with the past, present, and future all integrated into one constructural design. And when you begin to figure out how you can move from one period to the next based on your own internal mechanism, that's it. You've
Yeah.
achieved a level of mastery, man, that, you know, all these storylines are composed of in the comic books that, you know, we read.
So in the Hindu culture, they have the cities, uh, which are their supernatural manifestations. What are they called in the African systems?
Chi. In the African systems, there are two words that describe well, really you can even say three, but one is more specific. One word is called Sunwa, another word is called Fajin, and another is Chi.
Okay. So you mentioned Marvel, right? And as a somewhat of a picture for the real world applications, I've always considered their depiction of Wakanda to be what it would be like if Kemet never fell and instead just lived isolated.
Yeah, no question. No question. Beyond the shadow of a doubt.
Do you believe that we're headed back into a mystical or what I call a mystech society as presented in a movie like that?
I do. I believe that right now there's a very powerful cosmological imprint that is being well, I should say, let me say it like this, that the earth is being impacted with and everything upon the earth. But we are in a spiritual war. We're in a very serious spiritual battle right now because there are elements um, that are all about the destruction and removal of humanity in its present tense, and then these cosmological downloads that are imprinting themselves upon the consciousness of humanity that are all about expansion and awakening. You know, there's a old Hopi um, prophecy, and it says there will come to be a tear in the fabric of time and space, and those who have prepared themselves will be able to walk right through. And I feel that's where we're going. You know, that's where, you know, our current um, dystopian, you know, reality is kind of leading us into.
All right. So, for one, it's been an honor having you on. Getting to pick
It's
your brain a little bit. Where can people connect with you and find your resources?
my website is always open and available, and that's, you know, waynebchandler.com. Very simple to get to, and Facebook. You know, I'm not media savvy, but I do have a Facebook account.
All right. And just to give you the chance to kind of have the floor and just share some wisdom, do you have any more closing thoughts or any bit of wisdom you'd like to leave with the audience?
Just this one, which is really key, and that is within each aspiration dwells the certainty of its own fulfillment, and take that to heart.
That's great. Well, brother, thank you for joining me here today. This has been great. Um, well, y'all, that concludes this episode of The Inner. Please leave down below suggestions for who else you'd love for me to have on the show. And that'll be it for this one.